Hello students, welcome to the last session of the lecture on the chapter Our Environment, Class 10 CBSE Board Biology. In this session, I am going to cover biomagnification, details of ozone layer, biodegradable and non-biodegradable substances, and some information about decomposers. Already I have given you some information about decomposers in the form of questions and answers. In this session also, a brief account has been given. Hope it will help you a lot. Coming to question number 36, according to me, here is 35, sorry for that. What is biological magnification? Will the levels of this magnification be different at different levels of ecosystem? Answer as it is written, you can see the increase in concentration of harmful chemical substances like pesticides in the body of living organisms at each trophic level of a food chain is called biological magnification. Obviously, it will be different at different trophic levels. Basically, what is biomagnification or biological magnification? It's a cumulative increase in the concentration of pesticides, metals, as it moves up the food chain, which occur when agricultural, industrial, human wastes, they pour into the ocean via rivers, sewage, and they settle on the ocean floor, and they're consumed by the bottom dwellers. Have you heard of the company Chiso Corporation Chemical Factory, which is located in the Minamata Bay of Japan? Actually, this company used to release a chemical, that is methyl mercury, in industrial wastewater. So this is a very toxic chemical which is bioaccumulated and biomagnified in shellfish and fish in Minamata Bay of Japan. And when these shellfish and fish were eaten by the local people, they resulted in mercury poisoning by accumulation of high concentration of methyl mercuric chloride, which entered the human food chain, developing neurological disorders, especially in children. The disease is named as Minamata disease, and it is caused by severe mercury poisoning. Symptoms may be, numbness in hand and feet, general muscle weakness, damage to hearing and speech. So this is actually biomagnification or biological magnification, whatever term you may give. Next question number 37, that is, how is ozone formed in the stratosphere? We all know that ozone forms in the stratosphere. Okay, so answer is given. The highly energized UV radiation acts on the oxygen molecules, that is O2, and splits some of them into free oxygen, that is O atoms. These atoms then combine with molecular oxygen to form ozone. The reaction has been given. You can see O2 that has been splitted into free oxygen atom, that is O plus O. Now this free oxygen atom then combines with the molecular oxygen, that is O2, to form ozone, that is O3. Actually, ozone layer of the atmosphere is stretched over a distance of 10 to 35 kilometers from the ground. Under the influence of these ultraviolet rays of the sun, the oxygen of the atmosphere, they decompose into oxygen atom. That is under the influence of the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Now, one oxygen molecule combines chemically with an oxygen atom to form this ozone. Then we are coming to question number 38, state the function of the ozone layer. You can see what is written in the answer. The ozone in the atmosphere, in the stratosphere, prevents the ultraviolet radiation of the sun from reaching the Earth's surface. As UV radiation can cause skin cancer in human beings, the ozone layer acts as a protective shield against it. What to say? I have already said in the answer. So the presence of ozone in the ambient air, that is in the stratospheric or tropospheric ozone, that is that if it is present in the stratosphere, it's okay, but if it is present in the troposphere, then this is very harmful for the public health. But still, this atmospheric ozone layer has a specific positive role because they absorb 99% of the ultraviolet rays of the sun, which is very harmful to the living organisms. So in that case, as it is told in the answers, the skin cancer in human beings, it acts as a protective shield. So we can conclude that ozone layer is saving the entire living world from the ultraviolet rays of the sun by covering the earth as an umbrella. Coming to question number 39, what are the main causes of the depletion of the ozone layer? See, by bullets I have mentioned, the amount of ozone in the stratosphere began to drop sharply in the 1980s. This decrease is directly linked to synthetic chemicals like chlorofluorocarbons or CFCs. CFCs are used as refrigerants and also in fire extinguishers. More and more release of CFCs in the atmosphere led to depletion of the ozone layer, resulting in direct penetration of UV rays of the sun on Earth's surface, causing skin cancer in human beings. Actually, the main cause, which was first thought that flying of supersonic jet planes through the upper layer of the sky was probably responsible for the decomposition of the ozone layer. But recently, scientists are of the opinion that CFC or chlorofluorocarbon compounds are actually responsible. Now, this chlorine of chlorofluorocarbon, they act as a catalyst in breaking down ozone, which decomposes into oxygen. It has been estimated that a single chlorine atom can destroy as many as 1 lakh molecules of ozone. Oh my God. So CFCs, are quite stable. They are non-poisonous and non-combustible when they are present in troposphere. The compound is used as a refrigerant in cold storages, refrigerators, refrigeration in motor cars, insulator in telephones, plastic articles, etc. So unless and until the use of these CFCs are restricted, the depletion of the ozone layer cannot be controlled. Now the next question, that is question number 40, though it's 39 over here. What is the full form of UNEP and what was the UNEP's role in arresting ozone layer depletion? Full form of UNEP, you can see it's already given in the answer. United Nations Environment Program. In 1987, UNEP succeeded in forging an agreement among all member countries to freeze CFC production at 1986 levels. In present day, it is mandatory for all the countries to use CFC-free refrigerants. Due to the successful implementation of this initiative, the ozone hole has now become much smaller, thereby reducing the risk of UV radiation. So, Montreal Protocol, have you heard of the term? This is quite a very popular term. In September 1987, an international treaty on the control of the use of ozone-depleting substances was signed in Montreal in Canada, known as Montreal Protocol. 25 countries signed the treaty. It was decided that the production of CFCs would have to be reduced by 1988 to the level of 50% of the production in 1986. But still, it was at high risk. So in the Proclamation for Conservation of the Ozone Layer, again in May 1989 in Helsinki, the decision for total stoppage of production and use of CFCs was taken up. Then it was realized that maybe the CFCs have come down. Many steps are taken for controlling this. I will come down in the next question for that. Now the question number 41, what are the steps taken to limit the damage of the ozone layer? You can see banning of production of ozone depleting substances like CFCs, planting and growing more trees, using more eco-friendly refrigerants such as R23 as a substitute to CFCs. You observe this R23. I'm coming. It's actually, even traces of CFC are capable of causing severe damage to the ozone layer. Have you understood the importance of the ozone layer? I think so far what we have discussed, we have understood the importance of the ozone layer. That ozone layer is in the stratospheric region, but this ozone layer is actually protecting the Earth's surface from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. If the ultraviolet rays of the sun directly reach or directly hit the Earth's surface, there is a great probability of causing skin cancer, or any living organisms will be hampered. The life of the living organisms will be hampered. So at any cost, this ozone depletion has to be checked. So companies are constantly taking initiatives to produce and use hydrofluorocarbon compounds. They are HFCs, free from chlorine, as alternatives to CFC. This ozone destroying power of such compounds, this is HFCs, is only 5% compared to that CFC. But there is a huge but. The cost of their production is 3 to 5 times the cost of production of CFCs. So if there is a big question, why I'm telling but, why I am raising this question, see, when it is 3 to 5 times the cost of production of CFCs, you can imagine that how many people in India can afford to buy these refrigerators who are using these HFCs instead of CFCs, because many people, they cannot afford even to buy a refrigerator. And if the prices go up, then it really becomes impossible for the ordinary people to buy refrigerators. And in that case, what will happen? The refrigerator companies will suffer a great loss. In that case, will they really use these HFCs because they are very conscious about the environment? They don't want the ozone layer to be depleted, or they will use they will take some other measures. I'm not sure of that, but I'm really concerned about it, that when the prices go up, it's very difficult for the ordinary people to afford such refrigerators. So in that case, what will happen? CFCs will be used. And if CFCs are used instead of these HFCs, because the prices will go up, in that case, what will happen? The ozone layer will get depleted. Now, it has been estimated that it has come down to a little bit less, but ozone layer obviously needs protection, I'm telling you. So far our discussion, you have understood that ozone layer in the stratospheric region needs protection. Next question, question number 42. Why are some substances biodegradable and some are non-biodegradable? See, the answer has been given over there. It's quite explanatory answer. That's why I'm not telling anything about it. See, some substances that are broken down by biological processes are known as biodegradable substances. Quite simple, like human and animal waste, plant products like wood, etc. And substances that are not broken down by biological processes are known as non-biodegradable substances, like plastics, computer parts, Tetra Paks, etc. Plastics will not be broken down by the action of bacteria or other saprophytes, but these materials will be acted upon by physical processes like heat and pressure. So you have come across why some substances are biodegradable and why some substances are non-biodegradable. Saprophytes, they act upon these biodegradable substances, and that's why they are quite friendly. That is human and animal waste, you can see. And these saprophytes, they don't react with these non-biodegradable substances, so they don't get these plastics, Tetra Paks, they don't get easily mixed up with the soil. In that case, they are termed as non-biodegradable substances. Now coming to question number 43, how does biodegradable substances affect the environment? Now, if you come down to question number 44 here, but 45 according to me, if the wastes we generate are biodegradable, will it affect the environment? Can you see the two questions? Read the questions again. Aren't they same? Only the way of questioning is different. So what do you think? The answers should be same, but only the pattern of questions, they are different. How does biodegradable substances affect the environment? And here it is asked, if the wastes we generate are biodegradable, will it affect the environment? So the answer is quite simple. Biodegradable waste do not harm the environment over a longer time frame as they are broken down into harmless substances. Biodegradable wastes can pollute the environment only if the amount is huge and cannot be decomposed easily in nature at right time. Both the answers are the same because question patterns are different, but answers should be same. But There is a but again. I tell you, though it's not needed, not needed means for your information is quite needed. Recent study has revealed that biodegradable products may be bad for the environment. A very shocking thing that biodegradable products, they may be bad for the environment. Yeah, a research from North Carolina State University, it states that the biodegradable substances are releasing a powerful greenhouse gas as they break down. A powerful greenhouse gas is being released by the biodegradable substances when they break down. This is a recent research study from North Carolina State University. So we all know that biodegradable substances are friendly substances. They cannot cause any loss or any harm to the environment, but recent studies have revealed it. Now coming to question number 43 or maybe 44 according to me, where you can find how does non-biodegradable substances affect the environment. The answer here goes non-biodegradable substances, example given plastics etc., are the major pollutants of the environment. They release extremely toxic chemical compounds into the soil and groundwater over a long period of time, which can cause health hazards for human beings and other forms of life. Basically, the non-biodegradable substances get accumulated and don't get decomposed. So they remain in the ecosystem and that cause pollution. They choke the system of many animals, leading to death. When these substances accumulate, they cause water and soil pollution. You can give the example like pesticides, detergents, polythene, all these are the examples of non-biodegradable substances. I hope as far as we have discussed these biodegradable and non-biodegradable substances, the concept and the differences between these two substances are quite clear to you. Now the last question, question number 46, I told in the last part 2 of this our environment that already some points are still given with for the decomposers in the last question. So this is the role of decomposers in the environment, as I thought that these points may help you out to remember something about the decomposers or the saprophytes, as you say, because these are very important to our environment chapter, because they are the main friends of us, we can tell. So here the answer goes, decomposers break down the complex organic matter present in dead plants and animals. They break down the waste of other dead organisms. Decomposers play a crucial role in an ecosystem. Without their efforts, plants would not get essential nutrients, and dead matter and waste materials would have piled up. Decomposers are cleaning agents of the environment. Decomposers help in recycling of materials and replenishment of the soil nutrients. I hope all the points you have already read in decomposers, under the decomposers in the last session already. But still I have, what I should say, I have summed up the points, because decomposers or saprophytes, you can tell, they are very important to our environment, to the ecosystem. As I have told here in this chapter, you have come across these ozone layer, you have come across these biodegradable and non-biodegradable substances, you have come across these decomposers. So all these things are so much important in our everyday life in ecosystem. We have come across food chain, food pyramids, food waves, and all these producers, consumers, their different categories and all these things. Apart from these knowledge, means producers, consumers, they are there, these food wave, food pyramids, food chains are there, everything, relationships are there. But these decomposers or saprophytes, these ozone depletion point, means ozone depletion layer, which we have talked about, or this degradable and non-biodegradable substances, they are equally important to you from this chapter. So I think it's an interesting chapter. Not only an interesting chapter, you are getting a lot of information about your environment, and you know who are your enemies and who are your friends, and whom do you need, means you need to protect this ozone layer. So what are the steps to be taken for that? You have come across these CFCs, you have come across the Minamata Bay in Japan, what is the name of the disease. So all these things you have come across, and I think a great amount of knowledge you have gained about them. In that case, this chapter is very, very important and equally interesting. I hope you have enjoyed the chapter. Thank you. I hope you have liked the session. Anyone interested in getting the notes in the form of a hand note, then please let me know through your email ID so that I can send the same. If you have not subscribed to my channel so far, then you can subscribe now and also click on the notification icon to receive the first update when the next post will be published. For the students of Kolkata, once again, they can take the advantage of classroom teaching or smart class, where student-teacher ratio is intentionally less for better interaction. After all, students' benefit is the top priority of smart class. A special grooming section is there to encourage and motivate students and to help them to behave smarter in different problems of life, including disaster management. Smart Class provides tutorials in all subjects from class 5 to 12, all boards including computer science and computer application. Smart Class provides tutorial classes for NEET and JEE Mains by experienced teachers. Anyone interested can contact through email ID given below. Thank you. Stay safe.